Welcome to the LegalTube podcast, presented by LawyerLocate.ca. Join us as we explore the latest trends, strategies, and tools for promoting your legal practice in the digital age. Hosted by Mark Robbins, CEO of LawyerLocate.ca, LegalTube, and Digital MSpace, where we're all about legal marketing online for Canadian lawyers. Let's dive in.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the LegalTube podcast. I'm your host, Mark Robbins. We are sponsored by LawyerLocate.ca, as everybody knows. And I hope at the beginning I'm going to ask you, and I'll ask you again at the end, please like and subscribe to the show so that you'll get more information about when our next shows are coming up. Today, we are very excited and pleased to have as our guest Toronto family law estate litigation lawyer, Warren Tobias. Morning, Warren. How are you today?
I'm doing very well. How are you, sir?
I'm great. So let's jump in. How long have you been practicing law in the Greater Toronto area?
I got my call in 1976. So this is my 49th year. It's a long, long time, I must admit.
Wow, that is quite an impressive length of time practicing law. And you're still going strong, obviously.
Well, I try. I'm doing my best.
That's great. Sorry, I got a distraction there, and I had my own distraction now.
That's fine.
It happens.
For sure.
So let's talk a little bit more about your family law practice, because is it a big area for you?
Yes, it's almost what I would refer to, almost, not quite, but almost recession-proof. When things get rough financially and economically, the issues that the couple have in the past found irritating and difficult to cope with, but they somehow coped. Once the finances go into the negatives, it becomes less easy to tolerate some of the behaviors and tendencies of your partner. Each party becomes impatient, and it seems that we live in a society today which is very, very different from the society that I was in when I first got my call to the bar. You know, there used to be some shame to a family breakdown. Some sense of guilt. Geez, what's wrong with me? Well, am I a loser? Is that why my marriage didn't work out? You know, and people stay and they continue to tolerate. Today, it's much easier. It's much easier to say, look, things aren't working out. I'm not happy. You're not happy. Let's call it a day. And I think when I refer to it being recession-proof, I think bad economic times, in effect, accelerate the ability to perhaps separate.
I tend to agree with you because of my role with LawyerLocate.ca. We've always seen very definitely a rise in family law referral requests when the economic times are rough.
Right.
Clearly, right after COVID, we saw a huge spike in family law referrals. I take it again, people were in a position to do anything about it because the courts were closed, and it was just, especially in Ontario, it was very challenging. But then once everything opened up again, we just saw the referrals were getting a bit crazy. So yeah, I agree with you that it has changed dramatically. My past, Warren, I for 30 years was a private investigator in Toronto. I mainly did criminal defense work, but I did a lot of family law work, so I'm very familiar with what you're talking about. That, but another area that you deal with that is quite popular and going on right now is estate litigation. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Right. So, estate litigation is an area where sometimes the conduct of the parties, not just the opposite party, but your own client, becomes very difficult to understand. And from time to time, not often, but from time to time, an issue will arise where I may go to the police and I may say, look, I'm involved in this case and I act for so and their parents have passed away and their brother did the following. Are you interested? And the comments that I get almost exclusively are, no, we're not interested, because it is amazing what people, good people, honest people, law-abiding people, model citizens, it is amazing what they will sometimes do when it comes down to dollars and cents. All of the norms that control behavior sort of go out the window. And it's sad, it's frustrating, it's difficult to deal with, but it is a reality. And I used to think, and I admit now, that when I was under the impression that that things like that they don't happen too often. I now understand how naive I was. Look, there are all kinds of situations where brothers don't speak, cousins don't speak, children don't speak to their parents, parents disown their children. And I think I'm not going to go so far as to say that's the norm, but it is a frequently seen aspect of life in the family. And that's why when a person passes away, everyone's in there to get their share of the pie.
You raise a good point, and with that in mind, just to kind of nail you down a little bit, if you could just quickly give our audience maybe your three best pieces of advice with regard to estate law.
Well, the first piece of advice is your expectations have to be reasonable. If you're coming into the game with unreasonable expectations, you're just begging for a very long, messy, and expensive legal proceeding. So I think that's the starting point. Your expectations have to be reasonable. The second point, and I think this is very important, and a lot of times it's very difficult to sell to your clients because you have to remember when people are fighting in an estate situation, it's sort of akin to family law. So the emotions take over. And the idea is you have to rise above the fray. It doesn't help you at all to say, well, look, my brother said this. He was at a bar and I'm told he said this about me, and I'm going to really talk bad about him now. And you say, look, when we go to court, I want you to look pristine. I want you to look absolutely pure. I want the court to take what you're saying and to believe it. I want you to be credible. And it doesn't help you if you resort to the critical behavior that you're talking about. You have to rise above the fray. Let the other guy look bad. It's better if you let him look bad and you continue to look good. So that's the second, I think, very important piece of advice. And the third piece of advice is simply this. Out of every 100 cases, I don't even think one gets to actual trial. At some point, you've got to say, look, it's better to resolve this, even if I've got to make some compromises in the result that I'm going to get. I realize I'm not going to get everything I want. If it's a situation where you can hold your nose and live with it, settle. Don't go to trial. If you're stubborn and you say, no, I'm going to trial and I don't care. And even when you ask, for large amounts of money to prepare for trial and they pay it, normally it winds up being a disappointment. And that's just because no one can predict what a court will do. No one knows who the judge is going to be. No one knows what the judge's nationality is. No one knows what the judge's gender is going to be. No one knows what that judge's life experiences are. And all the judges will tell you, well, we rise above that. Well, some do, some don't, okay? There's a tendency to not admit your own prejudices. So look, and I'm just pulling this out of the air. This could be any group, but I'm going to pick now on Asians. Look, you may get a judge who doesn't like Asians. Consciously? No. He says, oh, they're fine, they're good people. There may be experiences in his background which cause him to have some negative feelings about them. And you get that kind of a judge and you're Asian, you got a big problem. So, don't be so gung-ho about going to trial because you just don't know what's going to happen.
Good advice. Good advice. Settle, settle, settle. I agree.
Yeah.
And the only area I don't agree with that one on, unless you're, is so we go into criminal law and we start talking about plea bargains and making deals, which is that's what's going on a lot now in Ontario. I know that, and people have asked me because of my background, and I've always said, one, the biggest homework you need to do is on the criminal lawyer you're going to hire, and when you hire that criminal lawyer, listen to what he says, because he's the one that knows the courts, he's the one that knows the crowns, and he's the one that's going to be able to tell you that if a deal is worthwhile or if you need to go to trial.
Right.
So
No, I agree. I agree. I do very little criminal law. Most of the criminal law that I do is a growth out of the family law. Okay, so you tend to do a lot of cases of domestic violence, and I agree with you. I think it's very important to listen to your counsel. And look, there are times when you just have to go to trial. You
right.
can't cut a deal. The deal doesn't make sense. And criminal law is, I think, um, very different from estate law or family law. I'll tell you why. If things go bad for you in criminal law, depending on what the charges are and depending on your conduct in the background, you may be losing your freedom. You may be
Right.
incarcerated. That doesn't apply in family law or estate law. So criminal law is sort of its own potpourri.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. So let's shift gears a little bit here, Warren. And we are a legal marketing podcast, and the focus is on how to help Canadian lawyers market their practices in this digital age. And things have changed from when we started when Natalie Waddell started Lawyer Locate 25 years ago. The only advertising that was allowed by the Law Society of Upper Canada at that time
Right,
was Yellow Pages. And
right.
then the year that was opened up, Natalie started Lawyer Locate. I was still an investigator, but I was helping her out. And everything started to change. And it seemed to me that over 25 years, it's been dramatic, the changes in legal marketing and advertising in Ontario and in Canada, for that matter. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think that the changes have been dramatic. Um, and I think it's very useful to compare the Ontario practice in terms of advertising to other jurisdictions. And I'm going to go south of the border now. Okay.
Right.
Um, when you are in certain US states, and in particular, I have in mind Florida being one of them, Arizona being another of them. Some of the ads I find are somewhat distasteful. And there is a tendency here, and I don't know, frankly, whether it's because of the regulatory agency that's overseeing it, which is the Law Society of Ontario, or whether it's because of the good common sense of Ontario lawyers. You don't tend to see the kind of puffery and braggery that you do in many. Now, that doesn't apply to all US states. Some of the uh, advertising, and I'm going to use a local example. You're familiar, I think you spent some time here in Ontario. Well, if you live in Ontario, you know Buffalo.
Yeah.
You know Buffalo. Buffalo is
Yeah.
right up the border. Buffalo is actually almost part of Canada. Certainly, Southern Ontario is part of Buffalo. And if you remember a law firm called Salino and Barnes,
Yep, I sure do.
their advertising wasn't at all offensive.
No.
Okay. And even now that Stephen Barnes has passed away, okay, Ross Salino's ads are still, pretty straightforward and they make very valid points. They make very valid points. Um, they do personal injury law. Well, it's a given. Some law firms have a better reputation than others.
Right.
and it's a blind item that you're purchasing. And to get back to the advertising aspect, look, you tell people what you do, you tell them how you'll service their file, what you'll do for them, what results you've achieved. Nothing's offensive about that. So again, I agree with you. I think it's changed dramatically here in Ontario. Um, Let me give you some of the firms whose advertisements I sort of endorse. Presler Law being one of them. Okay. Um, Not so much Diamond and Diamond. I mean, look, look, I've had some bad experiences with them. One of the areas that I act in, and again, this is like infinitesimally small. I would say maybe 0.5%. But I do the odd solicitor client assessment.
Right.
And I've had a couple with Diamond and Diamond, and uh, my client did well. Okay, they just don't come off very well. So I agree with you. It's changed dramatically, but I think that we're much more controlled and straightforward about it than many U.S. jurisdictions.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, as a legal marketer with Lawyer Locate, we're very familiar with all because we're national. We're not just Ontario based. We're
Right.
very familiar with all the law societies and bars and the rules that they have. Certainly, the Law Society of Ontario has some pretty strict rules on what you can say. You cannot in advertising hold yourself out as an expert. You're no longer allowed to do that. There's a whole bunch of just words that you cannot have in your, whether it's a spoken or a video or a podcast. You can't use these words in any printed form of advertising. So with Lawyer Locate being somewhat unique, that we're not just a legal directory that's very robust with profile pages that we put like with you're a member for everybody's transparency. Warren is a member of LawyerLocate.ca and has been for many years. And we're so pleased that he's still with us. But he has some idea of what I'm talking about when I say, with Lawyer Locate, we're providing our clients a mini website within our giant website. But we had to learn all these different rules and policies to make sure that we didn't put any of our clients at any risk with their law societies or their bar associations. But the digital age, in my opinion, and I think that's the biggest change, is because you're seeing what I'm doing right now. A lot of Canadian lawyers, it's just an automatic thing to be doing podcasts, where 10, 15 years ago, it was blogging. All the lawyers wanted to have a blog. They had to blog. And I was one of the people that saw that the future was in video and
Mhm.
saw that it's just because people are lazy, they don't want to read and they have short attention spans. Hence, YouTube is almost taking over as the number one search engine over Google. Um,
Right.
they get more traffic than Google. And we're doing the same thing for our clients with our other businesses that we do, like with LegalTube that runs
Mhm.
this show. We also produce podcasts for our clients, as well as Digital M Space. We do all the other marketing stuff in behind the scenes. But having said all that, you've been with us for a long time. Maybe you could share what your experiences have been with Lawyer Locate.
Um, I think that it's a changing landscape. If I go back, let's say 20 years, the frequency of referrals was much higher. Now, a
Right.
referral is not a guarantee, okay? I think a lot of us, even lawyers who have some experience, they just don't seem to understand that. They think, well, so and so is looking for an estate lawyer because they're in an argument with their sisters and brothers over dad's estate, and I'm really good. I'm going to get this business. No, that's not the case. Okay. We live in a free society. It's an opportunity to market yourself. Now, when I say the volume of referrals has become somewhat less, that's not due to anything related to how Lawyer Locate conducts its business. That has to do with the reality of a changing society. One of the things I was going to mention when we were talking about estate law, but it applies as well to family. It even applies to an extent to criminal, okay? There is a tendency today for people to represent themselves, especially when they recognize how long a case can go on for. They recognize the emotional cost. They recognize certainly the financial cost. And they say, well, you know what? I can do this. I'll just tell the judge A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And look, I'm not being critical of that. People have the right if they want to represent themselves. Frankly, I think it's a mistake, but people are entitled to make mistakes. But I think the fact that there are more and more self-represented litigants reflect the volume of contacts and referrals from Lawyer Locate. So I think it's less. Um, there's also, I think, a tendency for people to think, and certainly you can't blame Lawyer Locate for this. There's absolutely no blame upon them for this issue. But I think a lot of people think, well, you know what? I'll speak to a lawyer, I'll get some free advice, and then I'll get on with it. Okay? It doesn't work that way. It
Yeah.
doesn't work that way. I tend to be a little bit weak on pulling the plug on people. Okay. I'll go on and on for 15 or 20 minutes, sometimes even a half hour. Okay. I really should cut it short much earlier than that because there are people who are only looking to get some free advice. But my experience in terms of uh, my feelings about Lawyer Locate, I think Lawyer Locate does a very good job. I think it's a very good organization to use. And I'm not going to name names or mention any of your competitors, but there are people in your field who just don't cut it.
Right. Well, I mean, I've always said, when we got to 25 years, I kind of came up in my mind. I said, looked around Google and started trying to search companies, online based companies, and that how long had they been out there?
Right.
And there's nobody including the American LexisNexis and all the big ones that are big legal directories that have hung in for 25 years online. So we're proud of that. We've seen the changes too, Warren. I mean, COVID in our business was a huge change. And this is why you and I had a conversation off screen. This is where some of the changes came about the referrals because people had 3 years to sit at home and be at that computer and learned how to use the computer, learned how to search for what they were looking for. Before that, they would, oh, Lawyer Locate. Oh, I can one-stop shop. I can just go there. Then now they're reaching out. Now, has it worked out that we're losing as much traction? No. What's changed is before they'd fill in the referral request. Now what they do, and we have all the numbers to back it, they're drilling into all the profiles and then they're reaching out from the profile page to reach out to Warren. And this is the same old thing. If you say, oh, how did you find me? Oh, online. So,
Right.
so we've always had that struggle to prove ROI, sadly the best proof of ROI that I've ever seen over the years is when a member decides I don't want your service anymore. Okay, fine, thank you very much, and they're back within 3 to 4 months. Two
Right.
reasons. One of two reasons. One, they've hired an IT or an SEO company, said you've got to get that link with Lawyer Locate back on your website, right, to get traffic. And the other one is they see the drop. Phone calls, not as many phone calls, not as many emails coming
Right.
in. So, I mean, I think our service, we've tried to modify and move with the times. But
Right.
I appreciate that you identify that things have changed, but you still see the value in being with us. And it's the same for everybody out there. I mean, there's a lot of lawyers that we deal with that still don't understand the value of digital and online marketing, and that we don't really have newspapers anymore. We
Right.
don't really have a viewed commercial television anymore where you could have spots. And I don't think any of us can afford what radio wants because they're still the most highest priced advertising
Right.
platform. It's
Right.
ridiculous. I mean, everybody wants to be on the fan because they know they have a huge audience, and it's generally the audience that you're looking for, right? Because it's
When,
sports
when
people.
you when you mention value, and I think that's a very important point to spend a few minutes on.
Sure.
So if you look at the cost of participating in Lawyer Locate, uh, if you get one small referral, small referral, it more than pays for the cost of participating. Now, the odd time, you may get a referral that is generating huge amounts of billings.
Right.
Okay, you may find that you're retained on a case that drags on for 5 or 6 years. Look, I've got cases where the clients have paid well over $300,000, not all at once, but
Right.
over 5, 6 years. So, when you're looking for the return on your investment, something like Lawyer Locate, I agree with you, is far and away a better deal than other forms. Now, radio, I agree with you, is sky high. Uh, there are certain firms that will benefit from radio advertising, not small boutique firms like mine, but huge firms with 50, 60, 100, 120 lawyers. Okay. Now there's another issue that when we're talking about value, and that issue is that often we tend to be when I said before, one piece of advice I give to a clients, don't come in with unrealistic expectations. Well, the same thing applies to lawyers' attitudes when they participate in something called Lawyer Locate. You're not going to get any guarantees of business, okay? But for the cost, I think it's, a really, really good organization to participate in.
I really appreciate that, Warren. That means a lot, and I'll certainly make sure everybody else hears about it. Well, mind you, all
Yeah,
my staff will watch the podcast, so they're going to hear about it firsthand. So
yeah.
I know I'm being mindful of time because I know you have another appointment coming up. So we'll start to wind this thing down, and I'm just going to kind of throw the ball back at you. And what's Warren Tobias outside of the suit and the office? Who is he?
Uh, that's a very good question. I uh, Sometimes I'm criticized by people that I'm close to. Okay, my wife, I'm criticized for how I spend. Well, look, if you're here for 85 years, and that's not a given, you know, many people will live till 100, many people will die in their 60s. The idea is, you got to enjoy life. You got to enjoy what's out there. You got to travel. You got to go to good restaurants. You got to go to concerts and plays, and you have to partake of what's there. The man who saves all of his money and he's never had a vacation and he's never gone to a good restaurant and he's never seen a live concert and he passes away at 90 and he leaves a whole boatload of money to his children. I don't know that he's really enjoyed life. So I think that's one thing about me. People say, when will you retire? Well, I don't think I'll ever retire because I spend too much money. And that's just the way it is. The other aspect that most of my friends know very well, they call me Mr. Buffalo. Now, why do they call me Mr. Buffalo? Because when I was younger, I started to, I guess maybe when I was 17 and I had my license, and I used to drive into Buffalo with friends, and I really studied and learned about the city. So it's a city of magnificent architecture. If you haven't been to Buffalo, you should go even for a weekend just to view the architecture. There's live music every night. There's great restaurants. There's great cultural events. The Buffalo Symphonic Orchestra is amongst the best. The Albright Knox, now the Garrison Albright Knox Art Gallery, is in the top 10 modern art galleries in the US. And then there's the Buffalo Bills and the Buffalo Sabres. I guess that's probably my most obvious love is for the Buffalo Bills. I will be 78 next month, and I hope to God the Bills win one Super Bowl before I leave this earth.
I'm with you on that one. I'm not so much with the Sabres. I'm a diehard Leaf fan. I bleed
Right,
Maple Leaf blue, and that's never going to change.
right.
Warren, you're just a pleasure, and we got to do this again. I mean that because I think there's a whole bunch of other stuff that we could have talked about today. But
Sure.
like you say, I know you're mindful of time, and we're pretty close to our time as well. So Warren, thank you so much for doing the show.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for inviting me.
Absolute pleasure. So, everybody, that's the podcast for today. I hope you've all enjoyed it. Please take a moment to subscribe and to like our show. We really appreciate that. You'll get notified of when our upcoming podcast is. And again, we want to thank Warren Tobias for giving his time, and a lot of his knowledge was shared with you, with us all today. Hope everybody has a great day, a great week, great month, great year. Take care.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of the LegalTube podcast. Ready to take your legal marketing to the next level? Our show delivers expert insights and practical advice to help you succeed in today's competitive legal landscape. Whether you're a seasoned pro or just starting out, this podcast is for you. For more information, check out LawyerLocate.ca. And if you have any questions, get in touch with us. Thanks for listening.